Oh yes, I'm back with a new camera, and you know what? It's time to review Yellow Submarine. Yellow Submarine. Now, Yellow Submarine was released in 1968, and it's by George Cunning. And basically, when I was a kid, I was not one of those other kids that, was watching Disney Pixar films and whatnot. No, when I was a kid, I was watching films like A Hard Day's Night, Help, Yellow Submarine, as well as Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Simpsons movie, and so on and so on and so on. But at the same time, though, I was also watching Yellow Submarine. And honestly, I used to watch this film so many times as a child. But then, as I started to discover other films, this one kind of slips away from me. And about a week ago now, I was thinking to myself, I haven't actually watched Yellow Submarine in about 10 years. So I stuck it on last night, and honestly, it's one of the weirdest and strangest films I have ever seen. Honestly, it really is. Like, just the plot of the film itself is so peculiar. I mean, the plot of the film centers around these blue meanies. Yes, these blue meanies, as they take over Pepperland, and basically one of the kites on Pepperland, called Captain Fred, managed to escape from the invasion of the blue meanies, and in doing so, he has to go and find the Beatles to seek out their help in order to get Pepperland back. And on their journey to get Pepperland back, the Beatles travel through a world inspired by their songs, and it gets so weird and so strange and just so wacky, and honestly, so brilliant. I really like this film because it is so distinctive. It is so surreal in some moments. The animation is beautiful in the film, and at the same time, the fact that it is just so strange. That's kind of the reason I like it so much, actually, and the fact that you would never get a film like this nowadays. Honestly, you probably never ever get a film like this ever again, and that's kind of why I like it so much. And honestly, just like some of the musical sequences of the film are absolutely brilliant in my opinion. Like, oh my god, they're so psychedelic and so drug inspired, but just in so interesting ways in my opinion. Like, back when this film came out, it was 1968, yeah, the Beatles were starting to experiment in their music. Well, they had been over for a while actually. They started to experiment in their music about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, all because they stopped touring back in 1966. Now, there's actually a one-hour documentary made about it. It's called The Beatles' The Touring Years, 1962 to 1966, which explores this in more detail. But basically, the Beatles wanted to stop touring in 1966 because they wanted to experiment with their sound more on the album Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band and on the White Album as well. And basically, you can start to tell in this film, not only is the music in the film so experimental because it's, the music of the Beatles in this film, but at the same time though, this film feels like a visual representation of where the Beatles' heads were at the time that this film was made. This one was made in 1968, which is around the same time, the White Album was coming into fruition as well. So you get my point. Honestly, it really does feel like a beautiful dive into the mind of the Beatles, even with, George Harrison's quote throughout the film, "It's all in the mind." And honestly, you really do feel like that when you're watching the film. This feels like a psychedelic, drug-inspired world, all centered around the Beatles, and you really understand what was going through their heads when they're making such, fantastic music in the film, like Lucy in the Sky, Diamond, Hey Bulldog, and even songs like, oh, It's Only a Northern Song, and, so on and so on and so on. Just so many songs in the film just feel so, psychedelic, and just the way the film looks feels so psychedelic and so drug-inspired just from itself. It's almost like you're exploring the mind of the Beatles just in this film alone. And at the same time, though, staying on the topic of the Beatles here, I'm actually kind of baffled that the Beatles themselves didn't actually voice their characters, didn't actually voice themselves in this film. In fact, there are other voice actors which voice them, and the fact is, though, the Beatles actually make a cameo appearance at the end of this film in person, which is just so odd. Like, they make a cameo appearance at the end of the film, and they sing All Together Now, great song by the way, but they make a cameo appearance at the end of the film, and it's just a bit weird, like the fact that they didn't voice themselves in the film, but they made a cameo appearance at the end. Honestly, it's weird. I like the cameo appearance at the end quite a lot, but I'm just a bit baffled by the fact that they didn't voice themselves. And at the same time, if you look on the Beatles anthology, George Harrison himself actually talks about the fact that he never got asked to voice himself for this film, which I just find a bit weird and a bit baffling, but nevertheless, kind of unique in its own certain way. And honestly, it really is fantastic, and it really is so strange and so surreal to watch. Honestly, just the musical sequences in this film itself are so brilliant in my opinion. Honestly, they really are. There's a whole musical sequence which is centered around Hey Bulldog, and the song Hey Bulldog, one of my all-time favourite Beatles songs by the way, where you actually see a blue meanie bulldog. And by the way, the blue meanies in this film are just genius in my opinion. That's a genius idea. But basically you see the Beatles trying to defeat this blue meanie bulldog, and all you have is Hey Bulldog playing in the background. It's a brilliant musical sequence in the film. And at the same time though, the song Yellow Submarine is played in there, and it's used very well in the opening credits of the film in my opinion. And by the way, staying on the opening credits for a sec, another reason this film feels quite psychedelic and quite drug-like, and the fact that the Beatles were trying to play around with, their musical identity at the time. Another exemplification of that in this film is the fact that in the opening credits of the film, it says that the film stars Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Not the Beatles, it says that the film stars Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which is just so weird in itself, but another reason I kind of like this film so much. But anyway, back onto the musical sequences. Another fantastic musical sequence where you hear the song All You Need Is Love, as you see the Beatles trying to defeat this blue meanie glove as well, and at the same time, another great musical sequence when you hear the song Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band played, where everyone's being turned back into normal people after being turned into stone by the blue meanies. And honestly, it's so great, just the musical sequences in the film, and just hearing the Beatles songs in there just brings a smile to my face every time. Honestly, I love the Beatles music, and I just think it's used so well in the film. And honestly, it's a very surreal film. The animation is colourful, it's beautiful, and honestly very visually distinctive. But the thing is though, it is very unique and it is very different, and it's not for everyone, and that's fine. But personally, just the strangeness of it and the weirdness of it are kind of the reason I like this film so much. Honestly, it really is. However, that's not to say I don't have some big criticisms to this film, because I'm gonna admit, I do. Like, one of my big criticisms to this film is the lack of story, and at that, the lack of a compelling story. Like, the film's plot centers around, the Beatles trying to get Pepperland back from these blue meanies, and honestly, it's quite predictable where that plot's gonna go. You kinda can see it coming back. Okay, slight spoilers here, the Beatles get Pepperland back from the blue meanies. It's a bit of a predictable plot, and the film does, have a bit of a lack of a plot. Like, when you have those musical sequences, they kinda take precedence over everything else that's going on in the film, story-wise, and there is a bit of a lack of a story in this film, I must admit. And at the same time though, I don't know whether this was just me, but when I was watching the film last night on my DVD player, the sound design wasn't the best. I kept having to turn up and down the volume in some of the sequences where there was just dialogue between the main characters and some of the musical sequences. Like, some of the musical sequences of the film felt very loud, so I was actually turning down my volume in some of the musical sequences, and then in some of the sequences where you just get the characters talking, I'll turn up my volume again because I couldn't hear it, and I don't know whether that was just my DVD that I was watching on, but honestly, some of the sound design in the film was a bit all over the place, I must admit. It didn't hugely bother me that, but I did keep having to turn up and down the volume on my TV remote. And at the same time though, I do think this film is a tad bit outdated. Bear in mind this film was made in 1968, and look how far animation in films has come since then. I mean, look how many Disney Pixar films are made nowadays with, excellent animation. You look at a film like Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which has, quite similar animations, it's actually, not too dissimilar. And you look at, films like Disney Pixar films and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and you see how far animation in film has come since Yellow Submarine. Bear in mind this film was made in 1968, and the animation hasn't held up that well. It isn't as fluid as you might want it to be, and you can clearly tell that it is a film made in 1968. Saying that though, it isn't a huge criticism, because I started to quite like the animation of the film. I like the fact that it is different than, all these big animated movies nowadays. I'm just saying that for someone who's watching for the first time, you might think it's a bit outdated, and you can kind of understand why. However, saying all that though, when you have these really distinctive visuals in the film, and when you have these really weird characters like the Blue Meanies, which is just genius in my opinion, Jeremy Boob in there as well, which is just a weird character, and then when you have, George Martin's fantastic score in this film, by the way, George Martin, long-time producer of all the Beatles songs, by the way, almost all the Beatles songs, when you have George Martin's score in there as well, which works really well in the film, and when you have the Beatles music in there as well, used in all these fantastic musical sequences, you do just kind of go along with it. I must admit here, I probably like this film so much because I am a Beatles fan. In my review of Help and in my review of Noah Boy, I did kind of say that, I don't like these films just because I'm a Beatles fan. But actually, I think it's kind of the opposite here. Maybe I do like this film because I'm such a big Beatles fan. I mean, look at my t-shirt, I've got an Abbey Road poster up there, and so many other things. I'm just a huge fan of the Beatles, so maybe that is why I like this film so much. But the thing is though, I don't mind that though, because I'm a fan of the Beatles, and so the fact that I do like this film so much is actually brought a smile to my face. When I was watching it last night, it was quite a nostalgic experience. I mean, I must admit, when I was watching it last night, I was kind of thinking to myself, I was watching this as a child. When everyone else was watching Disney Pixar films and whatnot and everything, Despicable Me and so on and so on and so on, when everyone was watching those animated films, I was watching Yellow Submarine, which just feels like a drug-inspired movie. Honestly, it's so psychedelic and it's so weird and so strange, but at the same time though, those are the reasons I kind of like this film, in my opinion. Honestly, it's so peculiar, and it is just so weird, and it is just so different than any movie I've ever seen, and any movie I'll probably see going forward as well. But the thing is, though, I really like it. Honestly, it really does feel like a beautiful dive into the minds of the Beatles in the best way possible, in my opinion. It's strange, it's weird, it's peculiar, and those are the reasons I kind of like this film so much. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Yellow Submarine, I'm going to say that's a 7.5 out of 10. Honestly, this film isn't for everyone, and that's fine. Maybe if you're not a Beatles fan, maybe you won't actually get the same sort of fulfillment I had out of this film, and that's fine. Everyone has their own opinion of the film, all films subjective and whatnot. But the thing is, though, for me personally, this film works, and maybe that's because it's nostalgic and I have watched it from as a child, or maybe it's also because the fact that I'm a huge big Beatles fan, or maybe it's just because of the fact that the musical sequences of the film, as weird as they were, they all kind of work to me. I don't know, it just, weird things like that work in this film. The fact that it is so strange, and the fact that if you know about the Beatles, some of the references in the film as well actually work quite well in my opinion. There's actually quite a lot of comedy in there, and humour in there, you know, puns and everything like that, like one-liners, which wouldn't work for loads of people, might not make loads of people laugh, but if you watch the Beatles in interviews like I have on YouTube, or in the Beatles Anthology series, which was great by the way, if you watch like the Beatles interviews, you do start to like understand their comedy and their one-liners and their puns, and then you have that sort of comedy in this film, which actually worked quite a lot for me. I mean, not all the comedy worked, but most of the comedy worked for me. It did make me laugh more than I thought it would do, more than I remember it doing. And at the same time though, I think the Blue Meanie stuff is genius. I mean, it's the sort of things you can't dream of, the Blue Meanie stuff. Honestly, it's so weird and so peculiar, but it all kind of works. And at the same time, the whole Jeremy Boob character, which is just so weird within itself, and just so many weird things like that in the film. And the fact that they actually play around with time at one stage when they're singing When I'm 64. And you know, things like that in the film which shouldn't work. But because I'm a Beatles fan, and because I was watching this with a huge grin on my face, it all kind of did work for me, I must admit. Honestly, I really enjoyed this film, far more than I expected to the second time. Well, far more than I expected to after not watching this film for about 10 years. And honestly, even so it is so psychedelic, and even so it is just so weird and so strange, those reasons are coming out of this film so much. Honestly, as a huge Beatles fan, I thought this film was great, so weird, so strange. Not for everyone, but that's fine in my opinion, because I actually really liked this film. Even with its big problems, I still enjoyed watching it because it was so distinctive and so different than any film you'll ever get nowadays, or any film really made ever. Honestly, it's so strange and so weird, but those are kind of the reasons I like it so much overall. And so, all in all, I'm going to say that Yellow Submarine, I'm going to say that it's a 7.5 out of 10 from me. Anyway guys, what do you think of Yellow Submarine? Please do comment down below and let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Anyway guys, thank you as always for watching, and if you haven't yet, please do click down below and like subscribe on this video. I look forward to many more, both film and TV reviews come very soon on this channel. See you guys again soon, but bye for now, bye!